Am I the asshole for not telling my stepsisters how much money and assets my father left me when he died? I, 31M, refused to give my stepsisters any of my inheritance. My father began dating a woman when I was 8 years old. He and my mother had already split. The woman he began dating had 3 other children from another relationship, and me and my SM never got along. I never got along with her or her children, and this relationship only seemed to get worse when I moved in with my father when I was 12 years old. So for context, my father is a very emotionless man. He made it very clear to my stepmother that she would not parent me, and he would not parent her children. Each will deal with their own children, a rule which he abided by. She did not. To be clear, although he was not emotionally there for her children, he did but them everything they wanted. They went to private schools. They always had the latest tech and money. When they came of age, he bought each of them a car. Spending money was my father's way of being emotional. This was exactly how he was with me. All the way through my teens, she would increasingly try to control my life. What I could do, where I could go, what money I was allowed, what I could eat. If I mentioned it to my father, he would talk to her and it would stop for a couple of months and then begin again. The cycle continued all throughout my childhood. To be honest, nothing she did really bothered me. After years of being around them, they all just became irrelevant to me, as harsh as it sounds. I had no negative or positive feelings towards any of them. Fast forward to when I was 15, and this is when the relationship between myself and her children really took a turn for the worse. My father got diagnosed with cancer. As soon as he was diagnosed, he wrote a will and left me everything. The house, the cars, his money, his savings, his other properties, his business, literally everything. The will was left with his solicitor, and a copy was given to him. He placed this with all his other documents in a secure place, so people would know if anything happened to him what his wishes were. My father was given the all clear after a year of getting treatments and surgeries. It seemed as soon as he was given the all clear, my SM found his will and exploded. She came into my room with her oldest daughter, who didn't even live with us at that time, screaming at me, telling me I had manipulated my father, and to get out of her house right now before she calls the police. I was 16. How had I manipulated him? I left. As I said previously, nothing these people could say to me would ever bother me. They were irrelevant to me. I rang my father and informed him what had happened. Also said preciously, "My father is emotionless. I have never heard him change his tone of voice, let alone get angry." He turned up to the house within 20 minutes of getting my phone call, and as soon as he was back, he told my stepsisters to leave so he and my SM could talk. My stepsisters came outside, and all 4 of us were there, and I believe for the first time in my life, I heard my father raise his voice. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but after 5 minutes, he came out of the house, told me to get into his car. We were going to get food. In the car, he went back to his normal self. My dad's never tried hiding anything from me, so I asked what he said to my SM. He had told her everything. Thing he owns goes to me that will never change. The next few years, I don't think my SM or stepsisters spoke to me. Maybe menial things like hello, goodbye, but definitely not a conversation, not until I was 18. When I was 18, my dad and my SM gathered me and her children and informed us all that they were buying a new family home. My SM oldest daughter said, "Oh, that's nice. You'll get a good price for this one." And before my SM replied, my father interrupted and informed us all he wasn't selling, he was given the house to me. This was his house he had bought before he even met my SM. Every one of them turned and in unison began screaming at me how I take all my father's money and things along those lines. I didn't even know my father was giving me the house. I didn't even know he was buying a new one. My oldest stepsister began hysterically screaming for me to give her the house. She had a husband and a child, she needed it, and I was going to university, so I didn't. My father then piped up with his calm, unchanging voice that the new house being bought would be split equally between himself and my SM. So when they pass, I would get his 50%, and they would share their mother's 50%. This did not help the situation, and instead I began getting screamed at more. I was indifferent to them. so I didn't really faze me, and we moved on. 12 years later, I am now 30 years old. My SM and my father have been broken up for about 3 years. Still living together, just completely separate. I haven't spoken to my stepsisters in 10 years, even though I see at least one of them every other week. My SM got diagnosed with terminal cancer. She only had 12 to 18 months to live. She moved in with her eldest daughter, due to needing round-the-clock care, and my father couldn't provide it for her. So, 4 months pass, and none of them have contacted my father, not once. He had a stroke and ended up going into a coma. After being in the coma for 2 weeks, I reached out and let my SM know. I didn't delay on purpose, they just never crossed my mind. The day after I informed her, I went around to his house to collect all of his documents. In preparation for his death, I wanted everything ready, rather than have to search for it. And his locks had been changed. This didn't bother me, I just went home and forgot about it. 3 weeks later, my father came out of his coma and was due to be sent home. He was severely unwell, but he was alive. So went round to SM, got the new keys and took him home. After a week of being home, he received a letter from his pension informing him of a beneficiary change. So he rang, and his pension had been changed into my SM name. Now my father had 3 private pensions, and every one of them had been changed. His signature had been forged on documents. We then went through every important thing that was of value: pension, cars, bank accounts, everything. She had changed all of my father's car logbooks into her name and his pensions. In total, around 850k worth of assets and money she would have stolen if he had passed away when he was in his coma. However, the one good thing from this was when we rang the mortgage company for the property they had bought together, they had informed us that the property was in fact bought on a joint mortgage, which means both of them own 100% of the property. If one dies, the survivor gets 100% of the property. This wasn't an issue for my father. He said she could have 100% if he dies before it sells. Once confronted with the attempted theft, she just said, "I thought you would have wanted me to have it." After this, the relationship between them soured. They both wanted to sell the house. However, she wanted 100% of it. They agreed. He would get 30. She would get the 70. He was happy to give it her. So we were going through some more of his documents and found his life insurance documents. I knew my father was wealthy, but I never imagined how wealthy until I seen how much the life insurance policy was for, and I was down as 100% beneficiary. Whilst reading through the life insurance documents, I noticed a small section on a cohabiting policy. So my father rang them, and they informed us yes, even though I was down as beneficiary, she would still be entitled to claim 50% because they are legally in a cohabitation partnership. Doesn't matter, they are no longer together, they have a joint mortgage, which is all the proof she would need. So after my father had taken a turn for the worse and speaking to a solicitor, me and my him devised a plan. We asked the solicitor to send a letter to them informing my father would not sell the property unless it was a 70-30 split to him. To be honest, he probably is entitled to that because she never paid a penny for anything. He didn't care about the house, just the life insurance. Now, one of my stepsisters is a solicitor, and we were hoping that her first reaction would be to ensure her mother got at least 50%, not 30.5. And we were correct. A week after our solicitor sent the letter, we received a notice of severance from my stepsister, informing my father that on the grounds him and my SM had split, they are both entitled to 50% of the house. This is what we needed to legally show she is no longer cohabiting. My father passed away 3 weeks after we received this. His funeral, my SM and stepsisters turned up, and they were joyous, happy, laughing. This didn't really bother me. I knew how petty they were and expected it. Anyway, 6 months after my father's funeral, my wife and child were out with friends at a play area for the kids, and my eldest stepsister was there with her husband and children. I could see them staring and giggling, and eventually they came over. They mentioned the house and how we tried and failed to rob 20% of it from them and some other things. Then she started to say disrespectful things about my father, and I snapped. I told them, we didn't care about the house. My dad didn't want my SM to get his life insurance. My stepsisters went quiet for around 30 seconds and then started asking what I meant. I just grabbed my child and me and my wife and I left. The next day, I was bombarded with phone calls asking what my father had left me, and I told them every single thing I got in inheritance. I told them right down to the last penny. And then proceeded to brag about how we needed them to fill for the severance, because if we did, they would block and delay it, suspecting something I was then non-stop harassed for the next couple of weeks, telling me I didn't deserve the money. I should split it 4 ways, because he was all of our father, not just mine. Then the threats started, and I received a letter from my SM youngest daughter, who was a solicitor, informing me of legal proceedings they are going to take. So now, after 4 months of this, we were informed today that they have no legal claim to any of my father's inheritance. Due to all his paperwork, will, beneficiaries on his polices, which he was in sound mind when he completed, it has ruled in my favour. I received another phone call from my eldest stepsister after I found out about winning the case, begging me to split the money and assets, or at least give them the money from the house that my father and their mother owned together. My wife believes I should just give them something to leave us alone, but that would go against what my father wanted. Me and my wife both earn good money, so we wouldn't miss it, and the only one of my stepsisters who earns decent money is the solicitor. The other 2 are desperate for money. But when I think about it, I'm constantly reminded that I don't actually care for these people, so why should I help them out? So, AITA? Edit, just to make it clear, my SM passed away around 3 months ago. The house was sold for 1.2 meters, so they did receive inheritance, around 200k each, assuming she left equal amounts to each of her children.